Hi, and welcome to another in a series of technology tips brought to you by K2 Enterprises. My name is Tommy Stevens, and it will be my pleasure today to lead you through this discussion on how we could utilize Excel's Power Query feature to combine multiple worksheets and/or multiple workbooks. Before we jump directly into the tip, let me just offer a quick comment regarding Power Query, and that is if you really have not done a deep dive into Power Query to learn all that it can do for you, let me encourage you to take it upon yourself to really explore Power Query and all that it has to offer. The more I take a look at this tool, the more I'm amazed at the functionality and the power that's embedded in it, most of which is very, very easy to access and utilize. Power Query to this day is one of the best features that we have available in Excel. In our tip today, we're going to utilize Power Query to reach out and grab information from multiple worksheets or in fact multiple workbooks and consolidate that information into one location. Now, to be fair about this, if I was faced with that responsibility, let's say in a one-off environment, I needed to prepare a report from two different data sources, but I only needed to prepare that report one time, I probably would not use Power Query to automate that process. The real strength, however, of Power Query, at least as far as it relates to this example, is going to be the fact that Power Query automates this process and sets it up so that it's a repeatable process, eliminating my need to manually perform these same tasks each and every time I need to regenerate this particular report. And with that introduction, let's jump directly into Excel and get started working with Power Query. Now, as you can see, I'm starting in a blank workbook, although that is certainly not a requirement. Again, I could actually have the data that I wanted to combine together in the same workbook, but I've chosen in this case to keep all of the data segregated. I need now to reach out and begin grabbing or linking the data into this particular workbook. So I'll go to the Data tab of the ribbon. I will click over here where it says Get Data, and I'm going to choose to pull data in from an Excel workbook. More specifically, the workbook that I want to begin pulling this data from will start with one that's sitting up here on my desktop, and it is very conveniently named Actuals. So I click, say that I want to import that information. Excel is now importing that information from one workbook into this one, but as it's doing that, it's asking me to confirm what I want to import. I want to import the table called Actuals. And now I have the option then of choosing to apply various transformations to this data or simply go ahead and load the data in. In this example, I don't need to apply any transformations, so I'm going to choose the Load To option, and I will momentarily be presented with this dialog box that just popped up, importing data, and I'm going to say I only want to create a connection to the source data. Now, you'll understand in just a moment why I'm choosing that option in this case, but for now, we're just going to only create the connection and then click OK. With that done, as you can see in the task pane on the far right side of the screen, I now have the connection, the data connection between this workbook and the Actuals workbook. Now let's repeat that process by going and getting data for the Budget workbook. So again, from the Data tab of the ribbon, I choose Get Data from File, from Workbook, and then I will select my Budget workbook and click Import to basically repeat the same process that we executed just a few moments ago. Let's pull in that budget table. Let's choose to load this data directly to the data connection, which I'm now selecting and clicking OK. And so far, I've now reached out and made links from this workbook to bring the data in from the other two workbooks. Now here's where the magic begins. With those links, 2 workbooks, 3 workbooks, 33 workbooks, I suppose it could be, with those links already established, I'm once again going to return to Power Query, again, the Data tab of the ribbon. I'll choose Get Data. And in this case, I'm going to say I want to combine these queries. And when I choose to combine the queries, I basically want to append one query to the other. So I'm going to choose that option, of course, entitled Append. And I will then say that I want to take and basically append two different tables together. My primary table is going to be the actuals table, and my secondary table is going to be the budget table. Now see that we could have done this with three or more tables, but in this case we're focusing on just these two. I'll click OK to complete that process. And momentarily you'll see the preliminary results. You can tell that I have budget information near the top of this range, but as we scroll toward the bottom, you can see that all of my, I'm sorry, actual information, my apologies, actual information near the top of the range, but budget information near the bottom of the range. We're almost done. What I need to do now, what I want to do now is go in and arrange this information perhaps a little bit more, let's call it conveniently. And to make that happen, I will hold down my control key while I also click on the product column. So now you can clearly see that the month column and the product column have been selected. And with the month column and the product column selected, I will then click Group By to open up my grouping options and set up this data in a fashion that really meets whatever my reporting needs happen to be. I want to group the data by month. I also want to group it by product. That's why I selected those two columns in advance. Now I want to create a column and give this new column the name Actual. And I want the actual column to actually sum the data from the sales column that's sitting in the resulting, or I'm sorry, sitting in the data query that we just created. I'm going to add another aggregation. We will call that column budget. And then we will say again that we want in that column the data to be summed. And finally, the data source for this newly created column that we're effectively creating is going to, of course, be the budget data. When I click OK now, Power Query goes ahead and completes that process, and you can see now it's transformed that data such that I've got my month, I've got my product, I've got my actual results, and I've got my budgeted results for that same month, or for the same time period. And at this point, I will click Close, and let's go ahead and load this data into a table. And we'll put that table starting in cell, well, we'll just go ahead and click OK to go ahead and load the data in there, put it in the upper left-hand corner of the current worksheet. And now I have all of that data available to me in this particular workbook so that we're looking at the budget data and the actual data side by side. Of course, at this point, it's just Excel data, meaning I can do anything that I want to with it in terms of creating any other type of report or pivot table or chart or any other form of analysis. The important point to consider here is by putting this inside Power Query next week, next month, next year, whenever I have to build this report again, I only need to update the data that's sitting in those two original workbooks, the actuals workbook and the budget workbook, and then basically come back into Power Query and say that I want to refresh this query. At that point, everything will update for me automatically. As you can tell, Power Query is a very, very powerful tool. This is just but one of the many different things we can do with Power Query. I hope this has given you some guidance on how you could utilize Power Query more effectively. Thank you for stopping by and joining me for this tip. And please come back and join us again real soon. We plan on posting a number of other Excel and other technology-focused tips periodically on our YouTube channel. Once again, thanks. Have a great day.